Why is the church divided? What do I mean? Well, a Christian can quite possibly live their entire church life without ever having worshiped in church with a Christian of another race here in America. And how is this possible if the church wasn't divided by race? Let's take a quick look back in time, shall we? If we go all the way back to slavery, we'll discover that the slaves weren't even allowed to have a full Bible, just an edited one that excluded any passages that might cause them to revolt, and it was aptly named the Slave Bible. In this perverted version of the word, it was structured specifically to keep slaves in a subservient mindset. Add to that the fact that most of the slaves, including the ministers, were not literate in English, and when they did learn English, they were forbidden to learn to read and deliberately kept ignorant so they couldn't read the word for themselves. So there you have an illiterate preacher speaking every week under master's watchful eye about a message from the Bible saying to obey your masters, such as Ephesians 6 and 5. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh with fear and trembling. And this went on for many years, being ingrained into the psyches of the slaves and their future offspring. Now, meanwhile, the slave owners went to their own churches, being consoled with how Jesus loves everyone. I mean, just apparently not the slaves in their eyes, because how could you at the same time be holding human beings captive and doing to them whatever you pleased, from rape to buck breaking, which was the practice of sodomizing male slaves in front of their family, in front of other male slaves, in order to impose dominance and set an example for other slaves. They would brand people, tear up families, merciless beatings, feeding babies to alligators for bait. They were called gator bait. They called black babies gator bait. Castration, hangings, where they would even bring their children and food to eat it while a black man's body was swinging from a tree, and many, many other inhumane acts. But somehow they were still able to consider themselves Christian. How, Sway? I guess they didn't think the commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, and I'm pretty sure that theft of people counted towards thou shalt not steal. I guess they just didn't think that those commandments applied to them. Apparently not, but I'm pretty sure that the God that the slave owners were calling themselves serving was not the same one that the slaves were praying to for their deliverance. In fact, I'm certain of it, because God is righteous and he doesn't abide in unrighteousness. And if the hell of slavery was anything, it was absolutely unrighteous to the core. Now, the slaves were praying to be delivered from oppression while the slave owners were praying for it to continue, to the point where the whole nation became enthralled in the Civil War, which was nothing more than the South's bloody battle of trying to ensure that they maintain the right to keep human beings enslaved. Does that sound Christian to you? If we fast forward to post slavery, nothing changed when it came to church. Blacks and whites were still separate for church, and former slave owners were now extremely resentful, seeing freed blacks simply trying to make a life for themselves after receiving their freedom. In comes the Ku Klux Klan with their white hoods and robes, burning crosses, lynching blacks at will. And I used to wonder, what was the meaning behind burning a cross? It just seemed so satanic to me. But when I thought about it, the more it made sense, because you have to be under some sort of demonic, satanic influence in order to murder and terrorize people because you hate them for being black. Yet, these same Klansmen were ministers and parishioners faithfully attending church. Then we get to the Civil Rights era, when blacks had to fight to be treated with basic human respect, a time when blacks were not even allowed to come through the front door of some establishments to get a meal. They had to endure having dogs sicked on them, being hosed with water hoses, beaten by angry mobs and police. Do you think that blacks and whites were worshiping together? Mm-mm. But all through Jim Crow and segregation, whites were still claiming to serve the God of the Bible. Does not the Bible command us to love our neighbor as ourselves and to do unto others as we would have them do unto us? I'm sure those same whites wouldn't stand to be spit on, denied service, housing, employment just for their skin color. But they were good Christian folk with a photo of white Jesus on the wall at home to assure them they were doing no wrong. So here we are in 2020. We now finally have integrated churches. But in reality, here in America, most people still go to church with folks that look like them. Again, why is that? Why doesn't God, being the common denominator, bring unity to the races to worship together? Why don't good white Christians ever speak out against police brutality and numerous murders by cop on black people? Because the police are doing what they were originally designed to do, slave patrol. And just like they lynched some runaways or even a freed black man minding his own business walking home post slavery, it was par for the course. In other words, it was part of the job of keeping whites safe. If you don't believe me, just do a quick Google search of slave patrol badges. They are the absolute prototype of the current police badge. The only difference is that now there are laws against lynching. But ironically, even with laws against lynching, because victims are being shot and not hanged, it is not viewed for what it is. And time after time, these officers never receive any punishment for their crimes. Even further, they are being rewarded by GoFundMes when they commit these lynchings. White Christians will speak out about any other sin, from promiscuity to abortion, drug and alcohol abuse, homosexuality, you name it. But they are dead silent when it comes to the sin of racism. And make no mistake about it, racism is sinful. Anything that causes you to hate or mistreat someone simply because of their race is not of God. Evangelicals refuse to even address the elephant in the room. They have a sense of judgment for everything but racism. If police were to magically start killing whites the way that they do blacks in this country, and I mean, who am I kidding? That would never happen. But let's just say in some alternate universe, then evangelicals would have something to say and take action. They would not stand for it. But since it's not happening to them and doesn't affect them, they simply do not care. That is not Christ-like. The same way, good white Christians remained silent during slavery, Jim Crow, and civil rights. They remain silent today on injustice of black people in America. Now, this is not to overlook the contributions of the white people that truly knew Christ, the ones that took action, like the abolitionists and activists that helped with the civil rights era. But they, sadly, were the minority. Until white Christians call a thing, by acknowledging the continued injustice for blacks in the country we built and actually do something to stop it, the church will remain divided. The silence of the white church conveys their complicity with the abuse that we receive in this country. I am so sure this is not what the Most High wants, because He is a just God who loves justice. You cannot worship in spirit and in truth with a heart filled with racism. You just can't. And can we finally ditch the narrative that America was founded as a Christian nation, when by the time independence was declared here, it had already enslaved a nation of people and had nearly slaughtered the indigenous nation to extinction in order to steal the land that it was founded on? So to hold that ideal is really an insult to the greatness that the Messiah is. The grossly hypocritical behavior exhibited by white Christians towards black in this country has even led to a growing number of black people to fall away from the faith altogether, because they cannot relate to a God who would allow white folks to continuously oppress us for 400 years in this country, aka white Jesus. Well, in my next video, I'll show you how we've all been lied to about the true identity of Yeshua HaMashiach, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. So stay tuned. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any new videos. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Shalom.